She has no family. 4 words. Said to a nurse in a hospital corridor, about 9 feet from my bed, at 1:58 in the afternoon. My eyes were closed because the overhead light was hurting them. My daughter took that to mean I was gone. I was not gone. I was a court reporter for 34 years. My entire career was sitting in a room with my eyes down, saying nothing, recording every single word exactly as it was spoken. Colleen forgot that. Or she never really thought about it. But here is the part she could not have known. There was a woman standing behind her in that corridor. Gray coat. Folder under her arm. She had a 2 o'clock appointment with me. It was 1:58. Keep talking, Colleen. You have no idea who is standing behind you. If you have ever been written off by someone who assumed you could not hear them, do not go anywhere. Hit the subscribe button because my attorney heard those 4 words at the exact same moment I did, and she was already holding the document that would decide what happened next. And I want you to hear every part of what came after. My name is Vivian Prescott, 71 years old. For 34 years I was an official court reporter in Richmond County, Georgia. Superior Court mostly, the last 19 years in the same courtroom under the same judge. I have transcribed something like 11,000 hours of testimony. I have sat 6 feet from murderers, from crying mothers, from men lying under oath in a calm voice. And in 34 years, I never once wrote down what I thought someone meant. I wrote down what they said. Exactly what they said. That distinction is the reason I am telling you this story. My husband Edward died 5 years ago. Stroke. In the garden on a Sunday morning, while I was inside making coffee. Edward was a claims adjuster for 38 years. A quiet, precise man who read every document twice and never signed anything the same day it was handed to him. He is the one who taught me that. My steno machine is still in the hall closet. Gray case. 2 latches. I have not opened it in 6 years. Remember that. It matters at the end. Colleen was not always the woman who says 4 words to a stranger in a hallway. She was the girl who came to work with me on teacher workdays and sat in the second row of an empty courtroom pretending to be a lawyer, arguing cases to nobody. She was 15 the first time I let her watch a real proceeding. Afterward she asked me how I could sit there and not react to any of it. I told her because my job is the record, not my opinion. She thought about that for a long time. She married Wesley 11 years ago. Wesley sells commercial insurance and has the specific confidence of a man who has never been wrong out loud. In 11 years he has asked me exactly 2 questions about my life, and both of them were about the house. The first thing that went wrong I did not recognize as a thing at all. 3 years ago I fell in the driveway. Not badly. Wet leaves. A bruised hip and a scraped hand. I told Colleen about it because I tell my daughter things. She came over that afternoon and stood in my kitchen and said, "Mom, we should start thinking about what happens next." I said, "Colleen, I slipped on leaves." She said, "I know. But we should be realistic." That word. Realistic. I have heard that word in a courtroom maybe 400 times. And I can tell you that people almost never use it to describe what is happening. They use it to describe what they want to happen. I let it go. For exactly 9 months. Over the following 2 years, the record built itself. That is the only way I can describe it, and I mean it literally. Colleen began keeping a record. Not secretly. Openly. She would say, "Mom, when was the last time you had the furnace serviced?" And then she would write the answer on her phone while I was still talking. She started asking Wesley to come with her to my appointments. In March of last year, she suggested I stop driving at night. I have never had an accident in 51 years of driving. In August, she asked my neighbor Delia whether I had seemed off lately. Delia told me about it the next morning, standing at my back door with a coffee cake and a look on her face I did not care for. And in October, Wesley used the phrase medical power of attorney at my own dinner table, over pot roast, in the tone of a man discussing an oil change. I said, "I have a healthcare directive, Wesley. Edward and I signed ours in 2009. He said, "That's not the same thing, Vivian." I said, "I am aware of the difference." He did not like that. In January, I overheard the sentence that told me exactly where this was going. I had gone to Colleen's house to drop off a box of Edward's old photographs she had asked for. Nobody answered the front door. The side door to the kitchen was cracked open. 3 inches, maybe 4. I heard Wesley say, "She is not going to agree to it." Colleen said, "She doesn't have to agree to it. That is the entire point." Then she said the part 1 wrote down in my head, verbatim, the way I have written down 11,000 hours of other people's words. She said, "Once it's signed, it doesn't matter what she thinks." I stood there holding a box of my dead husband's photographs. I counted to 11. I have always counted to 11. It is long enough to stop yourself and short enough that nobody notices. Then I set the box on the step, walked back to my car and drove home. Colleen texted me 2 hours later. "Did you come by?" I said, "Left the photos at the side door." She said, "Thanks, Mom. Once it's signed, it doesn't matter what she thinks. You should be careful what you say near an open door, Colleen." I spent 34 years being the person nobody noticed in the room. I did not confront her. I want to be very clear about that because people always ask. I did not call, I did not accuse. I did not say a single word about what I had heard through that kitchen door. Instead, on a Tuesday morning in February, I called Ruth and Baptiste. Ruth and had been a defense attorney in my courtroom for 22 years. I had transcribed her closing arguments more times than I can count. She is 64, direct, and once told a judge in open court that his patience was not the issue in the room. I called her office and I said, "Ruth, and it's Vivian Prescott. I need to update some documents and I need it done properly." She said, "How soon?" I said, "Before April." I had a procedure scheduled for April 11th. Nothing dramatic. A cardiac catheterization outpatient. The kind of thing they send you home from the same evening. But Edward taught me you never walk into a hospital with your paperwork unsettled. So I made an appointment with my attorney for 2 o'clock that afternoon, in my recovery room, to sign what she had drafted. Colleen did not know about that appointment. I never mentioned it. April 11th. The procedure went exactly as it was supposed to. They brought me up to recovery around noon. I was tired in the specific chemical way you are tired after sedation, and the overhead fluorescent was hitting my eyes, so I closed them. That is all it was. I closed my eyes because of the light. Colleen and Wesley arrived a little after 1. They stood at the foot of the bed for a while. Colleen said my name once, quietly. I did not answer because answering felt like more work than it was worth in that moment, and because, and I will be honest with you, some part of me wanted to hear what she would say if she believed I could not. 34 years of sitting silently in a room while people revealed themselves is a difficult habit to break. They stepped out into the corridor. The door did not close all the way. A nurse asked whether the family had any questions about discharge. And my daughter said, "Well, it's really just us. She has no family." The nurse said, "I'm sorry, ma'am, I meant next of kin. Is there anyone else we should?" Colleen said, "No. There's nobody. It's easier that way, honestly. Easier." That is the word she used. I opened my eyes. And through the gap in the door, standing about 4 feet behind my daughter in a gray coat with a folder under her arm, was Ruth and Baptiste. 2 o'clock appointment. 1:58. She had heard every word. Ruth and did not say anything in that corridor. She waited. She came into my room at 2 o'clock exactly, the way she has walked into every room for 40 years, and she said, "Mrs. Prescott, are you well enough to sign?" Said, "I am." Colleen said, "Sign what?" Ruth and opened the folder on the tray table. She said, "Your mother retained me in February to update her healthcare directive, her durable power of attorney, and one provision of her will." Colleen said, "Mom, we should talk about this when you're—" I said, "Colleen." And she stopped. I said, "You told a nurse in that hallway that I have no family." She went very still. I said, "I want you to understand something about me that I do not think you have ever fully understood. I spent 34 years writing down exactly what people said. Not what they meant. Not what they wished they had said afterward. What they said. And what you said 9 feet from my bed at 1:58 this afternoon was, 'She has no family. There's nobody. It's easier that way.'" Wesley said, "Vivian, she was talking about paperwork." I said, "Wesley, I have transcribed 11,000 hours of people explaining what they actually meant. It has never once changed the record." I signed all 3 documents that afternoon. Ruth and witnessed them. A nurse named Anthony witnessed them because you need to, and because he was kind to me that day in a way I have not forgotten. Colleen is no longer my medical decision-maker. Ruthin is. The one provision I changed in my will, I am not going to describe. I will only say this. Colleen is still in it. I did not remove my daughter. I removed her authority. Those are 2 entirely different things, and the difference is the whole point. I am 71 years old. I went home that evening. I sat in Edward's chair in the front room and I thought about a girl in the second row of an empty courtroom, 15 years old, arguing a case to nobody. She had asked me how I could sit there and not react. I told her the truth then, and it is still the truth now. 'Cause my job is the record. The record does not care how you felt about it afterward. The record only cares what was said. My daughter told a nurse that I have no family. She was closer to the truth than she knew. She simply had the direction wrong. 2 weeks later I took the steno machine out of the hall closet. Gray case. 2 latches. I have not used it in 6 years. I opened it and I cleaned it, and I set it on the desk in the front room where Edward's chair is. Not to use it. To remind myself of something I forgot for a while. I have never had to raise my voice to be heard. I only ever had to be in the room. Would you have said something in that hallway? Or waited until 2 o'clock? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one, and more often than you know, your words become the next story. Share this with someone who has been talked about like they were already gone. And if you are not yet subscribed to Grandma's Moments, do it now. The next story begins with a grandmother who receives a letter from her late husband's attorney 7 years after he passed. What is inside that envelope will change